Hello and welcome back to my channel. You're watching What Helen Reads and I'm Helen, and today I'm going to be talking about polyamorous romance recommendations or reverse harems. So I've got a handful of books that I want to recommend where there is multiple partners, so more than two. So normally the majority of the romances I read are about couples. But today I've compiled a short list of books that I have enjoyed where there are multiple partners, and I'm going to go up in order of the number of partners, starting from basically polyamorous relationships with 3 people going right the way up to 6 people, so essentially a reverse harem. So I'm going to start with a book called Absolution by Sloane Kennedy, and this is book 1 in the Protectors series. It's available to download on Kindle Unlimited, and this is a polyamorous trio, and it's an MMM romances, so basically 3 men in this romance, and we are following Jonas, Cole and Mace. Now, Sloane Kennedy in this particular series writes sort of romantic suspense, and this particular series, the Protector series, is essentially revolving around a group of men who are potentially ex-military, ex-police, that sort of thing, who have come together to do the world a service. So they're essentially vigilantes who hunt down bad people and eliminate them from society, particularly sex offenders or anyone that has done particularly bad things to their victims. Now in this one, the protector in this one is Mace, and he has been sent to kill a man called Jonas. Now Jonas is an artist. He's been away for about 4 years, and he's just returned to the US and wants to set up his own art studio, and he has come into the crosshairs of Mace because Mace has got intel to suggest that Jonas is a very bad person, and Mace has been sent to keep an eye on him but ultimately find a way to dispose of him, and Mace therefore kind of like starts to not particularly stalk him but stake out Jonas's life so that he can find the ideal opportunity to take him out. But he finds that as he learns more and more about Jonas, he becomes more and more reluctant to actually hurt Jonas, and he starts to realise that maybe the intel he's got is perhaps not right. Meanwhile, we also have Cole, who is part of this group as well, and he's an ex-Navy SEAL. He is very sort of bitter and twisted about what's kind of happened, and he seeks Jonas out because he thinks Jonas has got some information about his sister, because Jonas does have some secrets that he's not necessarily sharing that may or may not be linked to what Mace is trying to do, which may or may not be linked to what Cole is trying to find out. But ultimately, is Jonas an actual baddie, or has he been sort of set up? Is he actually the victim? And Jonas, Cole and Mace form this relationship where they end up kind of together in this sort of polyamorous relationship, and what I really liked about this one is that all 3 men had equal relationships, and they had relationships with each other independently as well as a group. So it was a really interesting story and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would highly recommend. Then the next one I want to recommend is Wide Awake by Anna Fury, and this is book 3 in the Compound series. It's an Omegaverse and it's an MMF romance. This one's available on KU, and we're following Carmen, Connor and Brady in this one. Now Anna Fury has created a very interesting Omegaverse kind of world. It's a very much a dystopian world that we're living in, and essentially a virus hit all the men on Earth, and some of them have become alphas, and when they transition to alphas they won't go through this wilding phase, which makes them very, very dangerous, and as a result society has pretty much shunned them. The army has either rounded them up and taken them to testing facilities, sort of like prisons, or the alphas themselves has kind of fled to, you know, remote places and started to build communities. So in this we see a group of alphas who have created the compound where they live, and they're just trying to get by. And in the first book we introduce sort of our first female into the equation, who becomes obviously an omega, and introduces more and more women then into this compound. And as the story develops, we kind of like, you know, get more of a backstory. But essentially each of the alphas in their pack has a specific designation. So you have the alpha of alphas, and then you also have other designations like enforcers and strategists and healers and spirits and so on. Now if you are a healer and a spirit, your designation means that you not only have a relationship together, but you need a third person in your kind of triangle, in your group, in order to fully come into your powers as a healer and a spirit. And so Connor and Brady fulfill this healer spirit kind of roles, and they've been together for a while, so they're actually already in a relationship together, but they're waiting for their third person to kind of finish their trio. And that's where Carmen comes in, because Carmen has fled society herself. She is scared to live in this world, and she's kind of like gone to seek kind of solace. But what she doesn't know is that she's very, very near to the compound, and Connor comes across her little cabin in the woods and instantly recognises her as an omega and his potential mate, and takes a bit of a shine to her. Now Connor is straight all over Carmen. He's absolutely convinced she's part of their group, but Brady is more cautious, and he's a little bit jealous of Carmen as well. So there is that kind of like dynamic at the start, until obviously eventually Brady comes round as well. But I absolutely love this world that Anna Fiore has built. Would highly recommend this whole series, but this particular book specifically focuses on an MMF relationship, so I wanted to throw it in here. So then the next one is Give Me More by Sara Cate, and this is book 3 in the Salacious Players Club. It's also available to download on Kindle Unlimited, and this one is also an MMF relationship, and we're following Hunter, Isabel and Drake. Now Hunter and Isabel are married. They've been married for about 10 years, and Drake is their best friend. So also Drake kind of is that kind of best friend that tags along with them all the time. You know, he goes to all of the holidays, all of the family gatherings, and works very closely with them. Now Hunter is part owner of the Salacious Players Club, and Drake is kind of like a builder, like a contractor, and he's helped build and design the club and kind of fits it out. So they're always in sort of close proximity together, hang out quite a lot. Now Drake is actually bisexual, so he will have relationships with men and women, and he's always been very attracted to both Hunter and Isabel, but obviously Hunter's always been his friend, so nothing has ever happened to them up until the start of this book. As part of the plot of this book, the three of them go on a bit of a road trip to do some research at other sex clubs around the country and see what they can learn and bring back to improve kind of business at the Salacious Players Club as well. Now, when they start this road trip, again, they're in close proximity, they're travelling together, and when they're staying in kind of either hotel rooms or rented accommodation together as a team. And as they go through and explore these sex clubs, Hunter starts to get a bit of an idea that he would be very interested to see Drake and Isabel together sexually, and he really wants to watch. And so he asks Drake if he will have sex with his wife while he watches. And at first both Isabel and Drake try and resist, because Isabel's a bit upset because she doesn't understand why her husband would want to share at first, and Drake worries that it's going to affect their relationship, that Hunter doesn't really want this, and when it happens it will damage their relationship, because Drake very much sees them as his family and he doesn't want to lose them. And it's very interesting dynamic as well, because of course when Isabel and Drake start to be more intimate with each other, Hunter also kind of gets involved, and that brings up quite a lot of questions for Hunter about his own sexuality, and is he straight or is he also bisexual, and what that kind of means. And so I thought this story was very, very interesting, it was very deep, it was very emotional, and so, although there was, you know, it's a very spicy read. Like I say, it is around a sex club, so there's kind of like lots of like kinky scenes in this one and everything, which are thoroughly enjoyable. There's also a lot of depth to the story, and each of the sex scenes adds and contributes to the story and to their relationship and how they're kind of going to get through this relationship and kind of come to a new status quo between them. So if you haven't read it yet, I would highly recommend this one. It's one of my favourites from the series, and they're all fantastic actually, so I would highly recommend all of them. Then moving on to a erotic alien romance. So this is sort of a dark sci-fi reverse harem romance, and so we're moving away from just like a threesome, and now we're going to a group of 4 individuals. And in this one, the female is very much at the focal point of the relationship. The men themselves don't have a relationship with each other, but they basically all have a relationship with the female, and therefore it's more of a reverse harem book than an actual kind of like, you know, polyamorous relationship where they're all in love with each other. But this one is called Conquering Their Mate by Piper Stone. Like I said, it's a dark sci-fi reverse harem romance, erotic romance, and in this one we're following Fiona, who is a human, and then the 3 males are Prince Shandar, Lieutenant Carlisle and Lieutenant Bequin. Now, the concept of this one is that these men are all aliens. They are a race called the Senzan, and the Senzan have lost their home and are looking for a new home, and they also are looking for new females to breed with because quite a lot of their women are gone, and so they need to continue their race. So they have discovered Earth, and they've been living quite amicably on Earth, almost as refugees, and they also have still some spaceships in space around that kind of go around Earth. But of course there's lots of humans on Earth that don't want them there, so there's a lot of you know, political rallies and groups and things trying to get rid of them, and also there are some bad government groups who are trying to eradicate them completely. And this is where Fiona comes in, because Fiona is a scientist, and she is asked to look at a Senzan alien who has been poisoned. He's nearly dying, and can she find a cure for this and what's going on? And it kind of starts to unravel a bit of a plot that some people are trying to take the Senzan down. The prince of the prince, or the leader of the Senzans, Prince Shandar, he kind of then captures Fiona to find out what she knows, to see if she's got a cure for his people, and then kind of brings her aboard his ship, and ultimately decides to mate her. But in their culture, because there's so few females, then each female kind of has 3 males, so they get kind of 3 chances to breed with her, if you like. So all 3 males will have a relationship with the woman, and then at least one of them must be able to get the female pregnant and therefore carry on their line. So they kind of operate in a bit of a triad, if you like. They are independent of each other. Like I say, the men don't actually have relationships with each other, but they all have a relationship with the female, and sometimes their sexual encounters are like one-on-one, but sometimes all 3 of them are there at the same time. Sticking with the alien theme and also like the triad theme, we've got another group of 4 here, and this time I'm going to recommend Alien Captain's Prisoner by Corin Cain. And this is book 1 in the Captive Mates series, and this is very much a sci-fi kind of romance, also available on Kindle Unlimited. And again, we have 1 lady and 3 men, so another reverse harem. So in this one we're following Tasha, Captain Alien, Vinicus and Inunia. Tasha is a human woman, and the 3 aliens, the alien, Vinicus and Inunia, are all Aurelian. Their species is basically Aurelian species. Now, they actually operate in an actual triad. So whereas in the previous book I was talking about, there's 3 men to every woman, but they're not in an official group. When it comes to Alien Captain's Prisoner, they are absolutely operating as a triad. What happens in their society is that when they live for about 300 years, and the first 100 years of life they serve in the military, and as they train and develop, they they kind of bond with 2 other people and they form a triad, and each triad has a leader, and you have a strategist, and you kind of have the brute, and that's kind of how their triad is made up. Now the Aurelians are also short of women, and they can only mate with their fated mate, so they can't have children with any other woman unless it's their fated mate. And the Aurelians are running out of time because it's been centuries since anyone has found a fated mate, and although they do live for several hundred years, they have had to develop the ability to clone. So when it comes to the end of their life, their DNA is taken and they're kind of cloned, and cloned and cloned and cloned, and they know that they're running out of time because their DNA is getting very much diluted as time goes on. They can't continue to do this much longer, and they're running out of women, so they are desperately searching for their fated mates. So that is kind of the backstory of this kind of universe and how all the books work in the series. But in this particular one we've got Tasha, and she has her own spaceship, her own crew, and she's a bit of a smuggler, and she's a bit of an opportunist as well. And she steals 27 orbs from the Aurelians. Now orbs are really powerful in their society because it's what powers their ships and everything, and these orbs are kind of like very, very rare, but they're also they're worth a lot of money. So she's managed to steal 26 of these orbs from the Aurelians, and now she's on the run, and they go after her and obviously capture her. But because of what she's stolen, there are some other baddies called the Toads who are onto them as well. So there's now 3 Toad warships after them to try and get their hands on the orbs instead. So it's kind of like, you know, hijinks, lots of action, very, very fast paced. But among this, of course, as soon as they capture Tasha to try and get their orbs back, they also realise that she's their fated mate, and you know, encourage her strongly to form a bond with them. But sticking with a group of 4, I'm moving to The Bounty by Liliana Carlisle, and this is another dystopian Omegaverse romance available on Kindle Unlimited. And in this one we're following Olive, Killian, Dylan and Brock. Now Liliana Carlisle writes some really, really good Omegaverse and has kind of a slightly different concept to each of her worlds, but they're all sort of similar. And in this particular one, it's very much a dystopian future. Omegas are quite rare and they're highly sought after, and they are forced to, once you present as an Omega, you're kind of forced to go and live and stay in this place that they called Eden. And in Eden, the women are forced to basically essentially be sex workers. And they're very, very well looked after. They're given everything that they want, but they're essentially not allowed to leave Eden, and they have to service men when the men come along and want to, because like I say, Omegas are very rare, but there's lots of alphas who want to sleep with Omegas, and therefore they're kind of like forced into this very glorified brothel environment, so it's not great. As a result, Olive is hiding, and she's trying to hide the fact that she's an Omega, and she's hiding out in sort of abandoned streets in this city, and taking suppressants, which is trying to dampen down her scent and everything, so alphas can't find her, or people don't identify with the fact that she's an Omega if they come across her. However, she's struggling to find more suppressants, and I believe it's Killian who comes across her when he's out and about trying to find additional resources, and he recognises her as an Omega and takes her back to the place where he lives with Dylan and Brock, who are also alphas, and collectively they form a relationship, and the story goes from there. Then we're going up, so we're now up to a group of 5, and this one is Den of Vipers by K.A. Knight, and this is a dark mafia romance, definitely a reverse harem. We are following Roxy, who is our main heroine, and she has independent relationships with all 4 men in this one: Ryder, Garrett, Kenzo and Diesel. Now they do sometimes share her at the same time, but there really isn't any sword crossing in this one. But it is also a bit of a Marmite book, so some people absolutely love this one, some people absolutely hate it. I have talked about it before. It is completely bonkers, There's some very graphic sexual scenes in here. Definitely check your trigger warnings. But overall, I thought it was a really fun read. It is a very long book though, so I will warn you about that. It is over 500 pages from memory, so it is a bit pretty chunky. But in this one we are following Roxy. So basically Roxy's father owes the Vipers some money, and the Vipers are like a criminal organisational gang that everyone is afraid of, and the Vipers are of course Ryder, Garrett, Kenzo and Diesel. The four of them make up the Vipers, and when her father can't pay back the debt that he owes to the Vipers, they kind of take Roxy as payment and keep her in their apartment, and then kind of force her to service their needs and become part of their group. What they don't bank on though is that Roxy is pretty feisty and fiery and is an equal match for every single one of them. In fact, she's a match for all four of them collectively, and she is just as crazy as they are. And as the story unfolds, she ends up being their queen and pretty much their leader, because she is completely crazy, wacky, wild. So I thoroughly enjoyed this one. If you like a dark sort of mafia romance, then highly recommend. But like I say, do check your trigger warnings on this one, because it's not for everyone. And then the last one I want to recommend is Alien Meat Market by Lizzy Bequin. This is a reverse harem with 5 men and 1 woman. It's available in Kindle Unlimited, and as the title suggests, this one is a sci-fi alien romance which is a reverse harem and also involves an auction scenario as well. It's book 1 of Sold to the Rockshar series, and in this one we're following the heroine Bethany, who is human, and then we have our 5 alien males: Argath, Chael, Dramian, Bron and Zalaros. And essentially the storyline in this one is that Bethany is in the middle of a cow field, literally in America. A UFO comes over the field and she's beamed up with the cows, and the aliens that have taken her think she is in fact cattle and attempt to sell her at the alien meat market, where this meat market literally buys meat for sale to eat. And when they kind of realise that maybe she's not a cow, because she doesn't look like you know, the same as the other animals that have been lifted from this field, they suspect that maybe she has intelligence, and if you are an intelligent being, a creature, then you're not allowed to be sold in the meat markets obviously. And so to make sure that they still get paid, they put some numbing numbing agents into her throat to stop her from being able to speak. So people assume that she is not intelligent, and they'll be able to get away with selling her at this meat market. Anyway, while she's being almost sold at this auction, one of the aliens senses her, not only senses her but also smells her, and suspects that she is his mate, and he buys her from the auction and then takes her back to the ship, where he introduces her to his alien friends, and they start to try and determine her level of intelligence, if she's actually her mate, and if she is capable of breeding with them, because again, this is another alien sort of situation where the all the females on their planet have contracted this virus, and they are either all dead or in stasis. They're looking for a cure, and they're also looking for other females that maybe they can mate with, so that they can continue their species. I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was, I enjoyed it more than I thought I was going to, just from the title. I picked it up because I just wanted something, you know, fun and fast-paced to read. I definitely got that. It was more interesting than I thought it was going to be. I really liked how the story developed, and some plot points where the author solved the communication barrier between them and how that was all going to work and everything. What I did think for this one though, it was kind of a reverse harem story, but there wasn't, because there was 5 men, there wasn't a lot of time for us to develop individual relationships with each of those men, to figure out who they were. The author did a lot of different points of view chapters, so we got a point of view from each of the heroes, but of course they only, because there's 5 of them, or 6 in total if you count the female heroine in this one, then it meant that each character only got 2 or 3 chapters tops each throughout the whole book. So we didn't really learn a lot from them, we didn't really get a lot from their point of view, and quite a lot of the intimate scenes between them were kind of either one-on-one or just 2 of them with the female character, not necessarily all of them together, and they definitely didn't form relationships with each other, if that makes sense. So that was all I say about that one. Overall, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was really good fun. Would recommend, but if you're looking for a book where they develop a relationship between all of the characters and the characters are really kind of defined and they have a romance between each of them, then that is not one you're going to get from that book, but still a really fun, interesting read, and would recommend. So there you have it. So like I said right at the start, I don't tend to read too many where there's multiple romances, just because I don't come across them very often, don't particularly seek them out, but those were some of my favourites from the ones that I have read, so I hope you found that useful. If you've got any polyamorous relationships or reverse harem favourites that you want to recommend to me, please put them down in the comments box below. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and remember to subscribe to my channel if you want to see more content from me. So thank you very much, and I'll see you next time. Bye. And then the last one I want to recommend is who is human, and then we have our aliens. What did I say? Start again. For you to download The Bounty by Liliana. So a happy-go-lucky kind of girl. She is a kind of a what is she? She is a what is she? She is a you know, what's Han Solo in Star Wars? What is he? He is not a bounty hunter, he is a smuggler. Yes, smuggler, that's what it is. But some of them all the way up to reverse harem, yeah, do that.